Hello everyone, and welcome back to the channel. Today, we're exploring two crucial yet often overlooked parts of the Indian Constitution, Directive Principles of State Policy and Fundamental Duties. While everyone talks about fundamental rights, not many understand the role that Directive Principles and Fundamental Duties play in shaping India's governance and civic responsibility. This video will be helpful for students, civil service aspirants, legal professionals, and anyone interested in the foundation of India's legal and political system. And why should you care? Because understanding these constitutional provisions can help us all be better citizens and make sense of the policies that govern our country. We'll cover the purpose of these principles and duties, their importance, the challenges India faces in implementing them, and possible solutions to ensure they are respected and enforced in modern society. So let's dive in. Part 1. Who are Directive Principles and Fundamental Duties for? Before we dig deeper, let's start with the basics. Who are Directive Principles of State Policy and Fundamental Duties meant for? 1. Directive Principles of State Policy. Directive Principles, enshrined in Part 4 of the Constitution, Articles 36 to 51, are guidelines for the government. These principles aim to create a welfare state by guiding policy and lawmaking in the right direction. While they are non-justiciable, meaning they cannot be legally enforced by courts, their purpose is to promote social and economic justice. In simple terms, they are meant for the government and lawmakers to help them create policies that benefit the people and reduce inequalities. 2. Fundamental Duties. On the other hand, fundamental duties, added later through the 42nd Amendment of 1976, are aimed at citizens. These duties remind us that with rights come responsibilities. They are listed in Article 51A and include duties like respecting the Constitution, cherishing the ideals of the freedom struggle, promoting harmony, and safeguarding public property. So, in short, directive principles are for governments to follow, fundamental duties are for citizens to fulfill. Part 2. Why you should know about directive principles and fundamental duties. So, why should you care about these provisions in the Constitution? Well, they might not be as famous as fundamental rights, but they are equally important for the proper functioning of our democracy and society. 1. Directive Principles, Blueprint for Policy. The directive principles are crucial because they act as a moral compass for governments, ensuring policies aim at reducing inequality, promoting education, health, and the well-being of all citizens. These principles provide the framework for how the government can work towards social and economic equality. They emphasize key objectives like providing free legal aid, Article 39A, ensuring fair distribution of resources, Article 39, promoting the health of citizens, Article 47. They ensure that while policies might differ depending on which government is in power, the long-term goals of social justice and welfare remain consistent. 2. Fundamental Duties, Civic Responsibility. On the other hand, fundamental duties are essential because they remind every citizen that rights come with responsibilities. You might have the right to freedom of speech, but you also have the duty not to misuse it to harm others. Fundamental duties include respecting national symbols, such as the national flag and anthem, promoting harmony across different religious, linguistic, and social groups, protecting the environment and showing compassion for living beings. If citizens neglect their duties, it can lead to disorder, social unrest, and an imbalance in society. These duties promote civic responsibility, which is key to maintaining social cohesion and national integrity. Part 3. Challenges in implementing directive principles and fundamental duties. Now that we understand why directive principles and fundamental duties are important, let's talk about the challenges we face in their implementation. 1. Challenges in implementing directive principles. A lack of justiciability. One of the biggest challenges with directive principles is that they are non-justiciable. This means that citizens cannot take the government to court for failing to implement them. As a result, governments often prioritize short-term political gains over long-term goals like poverty alleviation or universal health care, as outlined in the directive principles. B. Economic and financial constraints. Many directive principles, like universal education, Article 45, or improving public health, Article 47, require huge financial investments. Given India's limited resources and competing priorities, governments often face difficulties in fully implementing these principles. C. Conflicts with fundamental rights. Sometimes, directive principles may seem to conflict with fundamental rights. For example, land redistribution policies, guided by Article 39, can come into conflict with the right to property, which used to be a fundamental right before it was made a constitutional right under Article 300A. 2. Challenges in upholding fundamental duties. A lack of public awareness. One of the major issues with fundamental duties is that many people are simply unaware of them. While schools teach fundamental rights, not enough emphasis is placed on the duties that citizens must follow. B. Absence of legal enforcement. Unlike some fundamental rights, fundamental duties are also non-enforceable. This means there are no legal consequences if a citizen fails to fulfill their duties, which makes it difficult to ensure everyone adheres to them. C. Lack of civic consciousness. In today's fast-paced world, many citizens focus more on personal freedoms than on their duties toward society. This has led to a decline in civic responsibility, with issues like vandalism, littering, and disregard for public property becoming more common. D. Misinterpretation and misuse. Sometimes, the idea of duties is misused to suppress dissent or impose a specific ideology on citizens. For instance, the duty to abide by the Constitution has sometimes been invoked to stifle legitimate political protest or free speech. Part 4. Solutions for better implementation of directive principles and fundamental duties. So how do we address these challenges and ensure both directive principles and fundamental duties are given the attention they deserve? Here are some potential solutions. 1. For directive principles. A. Legal reforms. One solution is to make certain directive principles legally enforceable or, at the very least, create mechanisms where the government is required to report progress on fulfilling them. For instance, the government could be held accountable for failing to implement policies related to health, education, or social justice by establishing more oversight bodies. B. Economic planning. Governments should prioritize long-term economic planning that includes sufficient resources for implementing directive principles like universal education, employment, and healthcare. Public-private partnerships and greater investment in infrastructure for social services could help the government achieve these goals faster. C. Judicial support. The judiciary can interpret directive principles in such a way that they work hand-in-hand with fundamental rights. In fact, the Supreme Court has already done this in many landmark cases, interpreting fundamental rights in the spirit of the directive principles. 2. For fundamental duties. A. Public awareness campaigns. There needs to be greater public awareness about fundamental duties. Schools, colleges, and media campaigns should focus on teaching citizens about their civic responsibilities. This will ensure that citizens not only know their rights but also understand the duties that come with those rights. B. Civic education. A civic education should be made a compulsory subject in schools, and exams like the Civil Services examination should place more emphasis on civic duties to prepare future leaders who understand the importance of these duties. C. Linking duties to rights. Some scholars have suggested that we should link certain fundamental rights to fundamental duties. For example, access to certain benefits or privileges could be tied to the fulfillment of specific duties, like participation in environmental conservation or protection of public property. D. Penalties for violating public duties. Though fundamental duties are not legally enforceable, penalties could be introduced for citizens who violate public duties. For instance, fines for littering or damaging public property could encourage citizens to take these duties more seriously. Part 5. The role of the judiciary in balancing rights, duties, and directive principles. The judiciary plays a critical role in balancing rights, duties, and directive principles. Over the years, the Supreme Court of India has interpreted the Constitution in a way that blends fundamental rights with directive principles to ensure social justice. For example, in the landmark Minerva Mills v. Union of India case, the court held that a balance must be maintained between fundamental rights and directive principles, as both are essential to the Constitution's vision of justice. The court has also emphasized the importance of fundamental duties in cases involving issues of national integrity, such as ensuring respect for the national flag and anthem. In the future, the judiciary can continue to play an active role in ensuring that the government respects directive principles, especially in areas like public health, education, and social equality. Conclusion: why directive principles and fundamental duties matter. In conclusion, directive principles and fundamental duties may not be as well known as fundamental rights, but they are just as important for the healthy functioning of our democracy. While directive principles guide the government to promote social justice and equality, fundamental duties remind us, as citizens, of our responsibilities toward the nation and society. Understanding these concepts isn't just for legal experts, it's for all of us. By becoming more aware of our duties and encouraging the government to fulfill its directive principles, we can work together to build a more just and equitable society. Thanks for watching this video. If you found it informative, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to the channel for more insights on constitutional law and governance. And I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. What do you think is the most important fundamental duty? Let me know below. Until next time, take care and stay informed.